Hey, this is Max. Welcome back to another CSR2 video. I am here with the 812 Superfast, a former milestone car that is coming up in a few days as the next Golden Cup car. In this video, we're going to discuss the Stage 6 effects of the various Stage 6 parts, as well as some tuning for both live racing as well as possible use in Tempest. So without further delay, let's start taking a look at this car's various Stage 6 effects. Before we get into the stage 6 effects, let's first take a look at this car at full stage 5. Here I have the car set up with stage 5 and full fusions. It comes in with a very respectable Evo of 1510, and that is tuned with the nitrous at a rather long duration and the tire at a lower grip. However, it seems at this point, at least, um, looks like I can get a few more out of this. Yep, 513, 1513. So at this point, it's coming in at 9.890 dyno, which is consistent with other cars of its caliber. Most tier 5s with full fusion comes in somewhere between 9.7 to 10.1, depending on the ultimate performance of the car. This car being launched perfect, whoop, that's not perfect. If you launch it perfect, you can actually get a pretty good run out of it, usually consistent to the dyno. In this case, of course, I'm probably going to run a little bit slower than dyno because of the good launch rather than perfect. Not the best run there, but 9.9, I'm sure I can actually hit the 9.8 if I kept trying. Nonetheless, not a bad start for stage 5 only. Okay, so first stage 6 we're going to look at is body. Here I have body S6 installed on the car, and I have retuned it to the approximate maximum evo that I can find, which at this point gives us a performance on the dyno of 9.485. This is assuming that body gave it a slight bit of adjustment from the final dry point and leaving the tire about where it is. We'll take a quick run with it and see how close we can get to dyno on this particular stage 6. Now, the launch on this car, again, if you launch it perfectly, in this case I did not, if you launch it with the perfect launch, you should be able to get pretty much the best run you can out of it. When you launch it slightly off like I did, it usually knocks a tenth or so off of the time, making it slower. So 9.561, 9.535 was the run I did earlier on a test run. A little bit off pace, but I think it could easily be improved upon. You can probably hit that dyno relatively easily if you make an effort to shift and also launch perfect. Next in line with the stage 6s, we have tire. Here we have tire installed. Nice little bump in Evo as well as the PP points, but not as much as body. So that makes you question whether it's going to do as well. Most likely it won't. Um, Notice because of the additional grip, the final drive had to be slightly more aggressive in order to get the higher Evo points. And what you end up with is a little bit of improved performance, but not significantly so compared to body. Body was 9.48, this is 9.68, starting at 9.89, so you got about a 0.3, 0.2 drop, really, 0.2 and change, which is not usually considered impressive when it comes to stage 6 effects. So let's check out the next one and see what that one does, which is transmission. Moving right on from tire, we now have transmission installed, transmission stage 6, which again adds a decent amount of PP points and some Evo points. With the combination of the PP being higher, the Evo being slightly lower, it still looked like it's going to outdo tire and performance. Here, the final drive has been adjusted, and we have a 9.569. Again, starting off with a 9.89, that's a zero point 0.3 and change drop, which is, again, decent, but a little better than tire, but not quite as good as body at this point. So let's move on and take a look at engine and see how that performs in comparison to the rest. Okay, next down the list, we have engine. Now, engine is here installed, 701.15.31. Looks pretty decent, but remember, tire had pretty similar kind of PP and Evo, and tire did not really do all that well. So let's see if engine's going to outperform tire and transmission with these numbers. Let's take a look at the dyno. 9.693. That's about a 0.203 drop from the stage 5, which isn't all that impressive, but it is a similar drop to tire, which isn't really good or bad. Let's see what happens with the rest of these stage 6s, because so far none of them has really been a huge drop, even accounting for body's relatively decent drop. Okay, so now we moved on to turbo, being the next stage 6 in line. Here we have turbo installed. The Evo and PP points that came from installing turbo and tuning it is not giving me very optimistic feedback. Low PP and low Evo usually means poor performance. So here the car's been tuned, but as you can see, the performance is pretty bad. I guess now the question is whether intake will be even worse than turbo, or it's going to actually outperform turbo in this case. Let's go and take a look at intake. Okay, after the disappointment that is turbo, we now look at intake. Here I have intake installed, right here, stage 6 intake. And looking at the PP point and the Evo point, there's a chance intake's going to outperform turbo here. So again, minor tweaking in the final drive seems to trigger the highest Evo here. And I'm going to go ahead and do a dyno and tell you what it runs. 9.704. Again, not that impressive. Certainly not much better than engine or tire. In fact, a little bit worse, but definitely better than turbo. So I guess intake actually outperforms turbo on this one. So that leaves us with the final one, which is nitrous. Let's see how important nitrous is going to end up being for this car. So the final stage 6 that we have here is nitrous. Now nitrous is generally useful for many tier 5 cars. Some of them like it more than others. Usually cars that have high acceleration or high top speed doesn't necessarily depend on nitrous as much. They tend to use it near the end rather than the whole entire acceleration curve of the car. So here nitrous seems to still be best when it's placed around 8 seconds if you don't have other stage 6s installed. The final drive went back to 2.62 to get this number. Of course, I could still try to tweak it to see if it'll go higher, but it seems this is the best position for it to be in, because even at 2.61 you get a drop. So here that's probably the best Evo possible, and a dyno shows 9.609. Now 9.609 is a decent drop, but again, does not outshine either body or trans at this point. So that kind of puts an interesting order in place, with body leading the charge, trans actually being rather important, and then nitrous to follow. So unlike some tier 5 cars where one stage 6 will drop it by 0.6, 0.7, looks like for the most part, every tier 6 will drop the car's performance by some, uh, but none of them is going to be super outstanding for the Superfast. So let's take a look at what's going to happen when we start looking at combinations and how they would impact the way this car performs. Okay, so now let's take a look at combinations. Generally, when I have a car with one really outstanding stage six, I may try to run stage six combinations with only two of them. In this case, nothing really stands out that much. So let's take the top three here, install them, and see what it does for us. Now, the top three does give it a pretty substantial bump in the overall numbers, which means the dyno should be pretty substantially lower too, which actually is a little over a second from where it was at stage five only. So here's the quick view of the tune. Let's take a test run and see what the numbers come out to be when we run the car. Now, understand this car may drive differently depending on how much upgrades you have. So right now, with these upgrades, it may be a little bit different than when it was running just one stage six. But let's see what we can get numbers wise here. Okay, so 8.808 on that run, which actually is a little bit under dyno, which is good. That's what you want. So now with three stage sixes, the dyno has improved. I mean, the car has actually improved its run to run under dyno a little more easier than when I was testing it initially with just a stage six body. So that's a good sign. Let's take a look at the other combination utilizing the other four stage sixes. Okay, so we've seen combo number one, and we know combo number one will get you down to about an 8.8 range for performance. And here we're looking at combo number two, which is the four weaker stage sixes all installed. The reason why I do these combos this way with the strongest and then the weakest is with golden cups, things tend to fall somewhere between these two ranges because the developers have always made it not too tough, but not too easy. And sometimes for Golden Cup, it's expected you'll get a few stage sixes, but you may not have all your fusions, or you have full fusions, but you're missing a few stage sixes, but you can still get through. So these weaker stage sixes may actually come in at the bottom of the Golden Cup requirements, or the top two stage six or top three stage six may determine it. So with a car that has very strong single stage six, I would say you would definitely look more at the top stage sixes and then say, hey, that probably will mark where the time would end up at. In this case, this car being somewhat more flexible overall, I would say there's a good chance that the final time will end up somewhere near where the weaker for stage six will land you. Without too much fine tuning, we're talking about somewhere around 9.2. So I would say if the developers are feeling generous, this might in fact be a final time for the Golden Cup. Or you may end up somewhere between this and 8.8. Then you're really talking about 9.0 something, where low 9.1s would be a fair number. And on the tougher side of things, maybe 8.9. But anything lower than 8.8, you're really talking about a very difficult Golden Cup. I mean, for Evolution Cup, it's expected, but Golden Cup, generally the numbers are about a second slower than what it is maxed. And so, what does it do max? Well, let's take a look at finally the maxed, uh, fully maxed result as far as dyno is concerned for this car. All right, now we have the car fully maxed. Let's take a look at this car. Um, when you have it fully maxed, you have everything installed here. The car will actually be able to be tuned to a pretty decent Evo point. What I have right now is I don't have the tune set up. I actually have it at 2.0. But if you move the final drive up, you'll find that eventually you'll get to a 1854, which will give you a 8.133 theoretical dyno, the car actually beats it pretty easily as long as you drive it sort of properly, which it's involving a perfect launch, kind of a quicker shift into second, and then another shift into third. Whoops, that's the problem with that particular tune, and that's the problem with actually any tune that runs this car well. So you always have the risk of a 0 RPM drop. So I kind of let it hit perfect dead center there. So what I'm going to have to do is let it hit perfect a little bit later. So let's do that run again. It certainly can do better. It's just that that launch kind of botched it. Okay, so I'm going to let it sit slightly longer. There we go. Okay, and this will allow me to get a much better run out of the car because there's no 0 RPM drop, and it should run under dyno by a little bit. That's not the best run, obviously. You can get this down to probably like an 8.02s if you know what you're doing. Timing the shifts in the first two gears makes all the difference. I haven't really tried too hard to figure that out, but that's where it is. Now, yes, it beats dyno. Yes, it's maxed out. It's doing 8.1, 8.0s and an 8.1 dyno. But reality is that's not all that effective in live. It's certainly not all that competitive. So where is it that you can leave this car to make it extremely efficient for live racing? Well, usually if you're going to use a uh, setup that'll beat dyno, you need to give yourself a little bit of a margin here between the final time and what the car would do in the sense of running down the track time-wise. So what you're going to do is usually the better way is to simply take some parts out, S6s that are weaker, give the car kind of a larger margin of error here to do the time. First of all, you have 8.6 as the dyno, which actually, if you tweak it a little, you may be able to get a little more out of it, but 8.6 certainly isn't too shabby. Here's 8.675, okay? So here's where it would be optimal, right? What you're gonna do is you're just gonna give it, instead of this time, you're gonna give it a little extra here, so you're just gonna start bumping it down. You'll see a nice Evo drop, and that's not a bad thing. So now it's 8.7 on an 8.6. That's only 1/10 dyno difference. You can actually give it probably 2/10, like an 8.8. Let's move it over some more until we get to about 8.8. And here's 8.8. Now, if you drive it the way you drove it for 8.6, you should still be able to get close to an 8.6 dyno, at least 8.7s, but you can no longer launch it perfect. You now have to launch it just a little bit off of perfect like this. And then once you do that and you drive it pretty much like you did before, you should be able to get a time that is well closer to 8.6 than it is to 8.8. So here, 8.689 on an 8.8 dyno, you now have a dyno beating car. Not only that, this car is flexible in the sense that you can further reduce to say here and get yourself an 8.9 car that will still run about 8.6 something, maybe 8.7. So the margin of error is still, it keeps moving around. You can adjust it to beat dyno by a little bit. You can adjust it to beat dyno by a lot. But the bottom line is it'll keep doing it as long as you shift properly and you tweak the final drive. This is one of the only one or two cars in the game that has that kind of flexibility where it lets you kind of play around with the final drive at different ratios and still give you the dyno beating setup. Now, it can get even more interesting if you're actually running less parts because what happened is that at some point you also have your basic Evo drop dyno beating tune that kicks in. So what you now have is a situation where the car essentially can beat dyno by a bunch because the margin changes quite a lot. Yes, you lost a lot of Evo there, but you're still at 1300. But here the difference is that in order to get really good, um, really good time out of it, you're now talking about something like this, okay, a much more aggressive final drive than what you had it. So right around here, 2.95, you're talking about a car that's going to do 9.1, but in actuality, you now can play with the numbers a lot more. You can put it to 9.3 or 9.4 or all the way down. And here you're talking about 9.6. But even though it dynos 9.6, because now the margin of difference between best evo and worst evo is greater, the car can actually do more dyno beating than before. So here we can get it to actually still do close to a 9.2, I would say, and yet dyno at 9.6. So that'll give you, oh, 9.1 actually. So that'll give you a 0.5 drop now in dyno. So again, this car with less parts has more range of dyno beating, and as it gets closer to max, it has less range of dyno beating. That's not actually unusual. Many cars are like that. This car has the advantage of being able to do it in almost a fashion which allows you to tweak and adjust to where you want it to be. So you can beat it by 0, 0.6, 0.5. Okay, bumping this up, you could now you're at 9.4, you can run 9.1, or you can do 9.357 and running 9.1. So you control how much you want to beat dyno by, and that is one of the few cars in the game that is this flexible when it comes to adjustments. And that is actually a very good thing for this car to be able to do. Oops. It's actually a very good thing for this car to be able to do this, because if you can get the launch down and you can control it right near 5,000 RPMs, you have a car that you can set up to kind of defeat dyno by however much you feel like, and that makes it extremely well-rounded when it comes to setting the car up for lobby. Because let's say the lobby is a 9.6 to 9.3, or let's say 9.7 to 9.4, you want to be at the top end of the lobby, but yet you still want to run under, you can do it, or you set it up at the beginning of the lobby in the slower lobby and you still run 9.1. So it gives you all kinds of possibilities to run certain time despite the fact that you have a different dyno to start with. So here I'm doing 9.115 with a 9.6, 9.114, yet we're talking a 9.357 dyno. Now, so you see what I'm talking about. You can choose to beat dyno by 0.2, or you can choose to beat dyno by 0.5. I don't know too many other cars in the game that can do this. And that makes this car very interesting to me, because it is one of the most flexible tuning cars all around in the game. And I love it for that. Not only that, it's just a nice looking car in general. Now, let's cap it all off with a quick discussion on whether this car would be a good car for Tempest. I can tell you that from this standpoint, this car really isn't all that bad for Tempest. Um, it seems to do its best 0 to 100 with the first gear kind of set up to near 100. I don't find it to get much better by going this way. You know, the general idea is if you go all the way to 5.0, it would get better. Not necessarily with this car. Third gear or second gear to 0 to 100, right? You can put the second gears a little bit better. You can also increase grip, but believe it or not, that actually slows it down. So extra grip doesn't help it with its acceleration. We know top speed on this car is pretty incredible, so you probably don't have to worry about top speed, but getting the lower 0 to 100 and 0 to 60 is a little bit trickier with this car. In fact, having nitrous kind of in the middle duration here does some of the best times. With that being said, this is probably not the best car to use for Tempest 2, which is all sprints and no speed traps. For Tempest 3, though, this car is perfectly fine. Even at 708 with some of the weaker stage 6s not installed, this car will clear all challenges all the way through. So for Tempest 3, it is a good option. For Tempest 2, it's a little bit more of a question mark, although I still believe it's probably able to do it. There is a very tough mid PP limit sprint in Tempest 2 that the Ferrari F12 struggles a bit with, and I'm pretty sure the Superfast is going to struggle on that one too. So that is why I don't recommend it necessarily for Tempest 2. For Tempest 1, because you can run a fully maxed car, it should be also a no-brainer as far as using one of these with enough upgrades. So Tempest 2 is the only one that leaves me with a slight question mark as to whether this car will be easy to use. So all around, this is a very good car, um, and with its dyno beating capabilities, it can be easily brought out to live racing and do some real damage, depending on who you're dealing with. Let's see. Now, here I am going to take it down here and see where that puts us first. 9.6. So let me put it to 9.499, which is actually possibly a bracket edge, but this is the slower edge of the bracket. So when you go into live with this, you should be facing opponents running anywhere from 9.5s down all the way to as close to 9.0 almost. But the guys who run 9.1 and 9.0s may get bumped. So you're most likely going to face guys that are actually closer to 9.2s. Um, okay, Kid Icarus is not here to race. Okay. Let me find someone else who does want to take a shot. Let me see. Wow, everybody's busy. Oh, here's a guy. So assuming I'm in the slower end of the 9.499 lobby, but I'm running 9.2, 9.3, with cars like the FXK, which is a fast accelerating car, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be racing him, essentially chasing him down. And that's a good thing because when you're chasing the opponent, you can control your run by slowing down once you pass them, but not letting it go completely. This lets you kind of beat the opponent by the margin you feel like. And I'm keeping it closer to my dyno of 4.99 by running a 9.416. So I'm not substantially beating dyno just to beat someone. Of course, if I run into a faster opponent, I could just beat them by a little more. That's, you know, the margin I have is all the way to 9.1. So if I want to go crazy, I could run a 9.1. Running that fast probably will get me bumped though. So, once you start using this car, you have to have a little bit of self-control to make sure you're just not going crazy with it. This car was quite popular when it first came out in live lobbies. I've seen a lot of them back then. They have since slowly but surely disappeared. My feeling is that most of the guys figured out that if you just drop final drive to 2.0, you wreck dyno by a bunch, and then ultimately they killed their car because they're running too far under. Versus this way, where if you control it better, you should very well be able to run past the guy and still not killing your car the way some people have done in the past. Now, this one, I'm going to have to run past him first and then slow down, just like before, just a little bit ahead of him, and boom, slow. 9.412 again on a 9.449. So very controllable car on top of the fact that it is a dyno crusher. Anyway, um, love the car. I highly recommend you to get this if you have enough gold keys. You won't regret it. Use the bronze keys, get yourself some stage sixes, particularly the big ones like nitrous body and trans, and you'll be all set. This car could serve you in live and in map races and even for prize cups, etc., for a long time. Not to put aside the fact that it's also a very nice looking Ferrari and it's a very well and easy to build car because it's a Ferrari. Well, I'm going to end the video here because I've already rambled on for quite a bit. You can probably tell from all my ramblings how much I like this car. It is a great car. I really hope that you have good luck this season in polling it. Good luck in the Golden Cup. Leave comments. Let me know if you have questions. And please subscribe if you like my videos because this way you can get notifications when I put up videos for cars like this. I will do them pretty much every season where I have a car that's fully built. Thank you for watching my videos. I'll catch you next time. with another CSR2 video.